Hello, everyone. I'm Shaylee, and I will be your host today. So welcome to our second webinar in the series, Unlocking the Secrets to an Innovative Mind. Shape Your Future brings you industry leaders so you can hear from the top professionals and their innovative careers and paths. You can find our website with the link in the comments to find more information about Shape Your Future and for details and notifications for our other events. To hear about our latest updates and information, be sure to join our subscription list. So without further ado, let me introduce everyone to George Hemingway.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
So George is the head of innovation practice at Stratus Consulting. He attended Columbia for his MBA, is a leading futurist, having spoken globally from NASA to the board of Global 500 corporations, and is part of the governing board at the Chamber Orchestra of New York. He is on the advisory board for innovation and growth at the Lassonde Institute of the University of Toronto and is a member of the board of advisors at Moonmark. George, I can't wait to know more about you, your career, and all your experiences. Please tell us more about you.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's very kind. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to share a little bit of what I've learned with the next generation of leaders and innovators. So thanks again for having me. My background, I guess where to start. Well, let me start a little bit with what I do today. Today, I run a management consultancy, essentially advising the leaders of organizations, of companies, heads of state on the future, on uncertainty, and the fact that the future is an uncertain place. I mean, it's nothing like the past, but that just because that's the case, it doesn't mean that uncertainty is a bad thing. Sure, it's a little scary, but it's also filled with wonders and it's filled with opportunity. And so what I spend a lot of my time doing is helping people to get out of their own way. Let's see, I guess, I'll start when I was a kid. I was actually a pretty quiet kid. And I spent most of my time reading and learning a lot of different things. And wasn't really the most outgoing, vibrant person in the world, a little different, I suspect, than I am today. But I like to tinker with things. I got in a lot of trouble with my dad for taking apart the back of a television because I wanted to know how it worked. And I got some more trouble by taking apart the back of a clock he really liked because I wanted to know how to make things run a little faster, run a little better. And I think that's kind of been the story of my life. I like to tinker. I like to make things run faster, run better, understand what make things tick. And so after that, I went to school, as one does, but along the way I got bored, which I guess is another story of my life. And started what I guess would be called a .com, except we didn't have .coms. This was back in the last century, in the early 90s. So I started an ISP, but it was also a place where people could dial in, they could sell flowers, and they could talk with each other. They could buy books. They could have conversations. In fact, it looked a lot like a lot of businesses today that are worth $1 billion. So I should have stuck with it, and sold that. And then I pivoted again. I ended up becoming a professional singer. And I sang on the stage, I sang musicals. Did that a while, I pivoted again. And I went to business school for undergrad, worked a bit, went to business school, I got myself an MBA. And for the last 20 years, I've been essentially helping leaders to think differently about what's possible, to reinvent their businesses, to rethink about how their countries can change for the future. And really more than anything, to understand how the things that we see in society today, how our beliefs and our needs and our pains really impact how businesses succeed or fail. Because we live in a world where what you care about is different than what I cared about. And it's different from what my dad cared about. And it's different from what my grandmother cared about. And we can't operate in the same bubble. And yet we do, because the things that made me successful, that worked for me for 40 something years, aren't necessarily going to work for the next 40 years. And so getting people to get that is a huge part of the job. Does that help?
Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was a really interesting, great journey, how you were able to make all of those pivots, but still end up where you are today.
Yeah.
I wanted to start by asking you, I know you mentioned a bit about Stratalus and the work
Mhm.
you do on advising your clients,
Yeah.
but how exactly can we outperform in times of uncertainty?
Yeah.
Uh, would you mind telling from both like a business perspective and kind of from an individual perspective, like us as students?
Yeah, I mean, so I don't think that a business perspective and an individual perspective are really any different, right? So businesses really are just a bunch of people, organizations put together, and it's the mindset of those people. And yeah, it's true when you put people in teams and they work as organizations, they don't necessarily think the same way as one individual, but the mindset of those people is the secret to everything. So the first thing you can do to well, let's say outperform in uncertain times, or at least be ready to meet uncertainty, is one, you've got to recognize, as I was talking about before, that you have to face the future. You've got to know that the future is nothing like the past, that the world around us is changing so fast. Let's say that your entire business was built on the fact that you had a bunch of stores that were easy to access and right next door to lots of different folks. Banks are based on this, right? Your drugstore is based on this. That's why there's a CVS and a Walgreen and a Rite Aid on every corner, because their logic is the closer they are, the better it'll be. All right. Well, along comes an Amazon, or along comes COVID, and suddenly the fact that the store is there and it's big and it's got everything in it and everybody goes there actually kind of sucks, because the last place you want to be is in a big box with lots of other people. Right? Suddenly the tiny little store that you didn't go into because they only had 3 kinds of toothpaste, right, is okay because it's only you and one other person. So, you have to recognize the world changes all the time, and you've got to face the future. The second thing you've got to be able to do is you've got to consider the showstoppers. COVID's a great example. A lot of time businesses and people set a path for themselves. I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a business person. I'm going to be a ballerina. And no one ever stops to think. I mean, we tend not to stop to think about the things that could stop you from achieving your goals. Businesses don't think about what are the showstoppers that can prevent them from achieving their visions of the future. And we as people tend not to think about the things that are sort of negative or scary to us. It's kind of why and it's a generational thing as well, I find, but let's not go into that too much, because who knows, my mother may be watching. I find that folks don't like to face their own mortality. That's why I'm really worried, about my daughter going outside, because she might get sick. But I'm going to go outside without a mask and I'm going to go for a run because I'm never going to get ill because I'm made of steel. And so people and businesses don't like to face the stuff that's unfortunate and uncomfortable for us. And so one of the things you have to do as a person, as a business, is when you think of your plans of the future, also think about the stuff that can keep you from going there, and think about, how do I either prepare for that or have a backup plan? And then the third thing you have to do is you've just got to be ready to pivot. I mean, if my life is about anything, it's about the fact that, you got to spin, you got to be nimble. And you got to be prepared for stuff to go left or right. And as a company, you've got to be thinking as well about, how do we adapt when our plans don't go the way we're going to, because they don't. Nothing ever turns out, well, very few things ever turn out the way that you think they're going to.
No, thank you so much for that. That was really insightful. I think, like you said, thinking about things the way they are going to be in the future rather than the past, and what could go wrong and what are possible setbacks. Like I myself, I never think of, if I want to go into business,
Right.
what is going to stop me from going into business? You often think of the things that you could do to get to your end goal.
Right. Right. And so, I mean, that's the challenge. I mean, if you think about it, right, I never really intended to end up in business when I started out. I thought, when I went for my undergrad, right, I didn't even go to the business school. So I did my undergrad at NYU. I did my grad NYU. I did my grad at Columbia. And when I started at NYU, I double majored in music composition, because I enjoyed composing music, and in economics, which is a great degree, but not exactly what you would call a practical business degree, right? It's much more a theoretical practice. And I figured to myself, hey, economics was my backup plan. I'm going to become a composer. And then I went ahead and, I did some composition. It was fun. I did some economics. It was okay. And I ended up singing, which has nothing to do with composing and nothing to do with economics. And then I sang for a while. And then my dad and I talked. He convinced me, son, singing's wonderful, but there's only one Pavarotti, Michael Jackson, choose your poison. You should try and make some money just as a backup plan. So I went into business. And who knows, maybe 3 years from now, I'll just give up and become a basket weaver or something like that. I mean, you can't, but it's important to be nimble. It's kind of the key to everything.
Yeah, like being prepared. And I really like how you were able to make those pivots in your life. How was it hard? Like, what made you decide that I need to start trying out more things in business? Like you mentioned, your dad talked to
Yeah.
you and that, but if music was such a passion for you, how were you
Right.
able to make that change over and to start going into business?
Okay. So I think that's a great, it's a great insight. It's a great question. You have to know where your passions lie, and know the things you enjoy and sort of roll with them. And for me, I guess the more I think about it, because sitting back and thinking about your past is something that you don't always do. The more I realized that what I enjoyed doing was trying new things. What I enjoyed doing was experimenting and growing. And if I've got a weakness, it's that I've had to work over the years to let myself focus on fewer things and to not get bored as quickly as I did in the past. So I love music. I've always loved music. My mother brought me up with music. We used to go to shows. We used to go to the Philharmonic and go to concerts. I used to sing. I used to compose, all that other jazz, right? And I love it. And I still do it, except now I sing in the shower, or I sing for my friends, or I compose in the back of the house, which drives the neighbors crazy. I keep my passions. But what I do is I took that passion for the arts, which is really what it was, a passion for the creativity, and I brought it into business. So I'm not an investment banker. I'm not an accountant. I'm not running linear operations, as much as it's fun and useful and valuable. I'm the crazy guy with the pocket square and the French cuffs shaped like a shiny dog that's out there getting business people to think about what's possible and what's different. And to do that, I had to have cred. I had to have a business degree, 2 business degrees. I had to be an executive. I had to run a successful business. I had to work 20 years. And now I get to be the crazy person in the room. But it's still just creativity. And that's the key to all of it, really.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was awesome and like inspiring. This kind of brings me to my next topic. So a lot of our audience was really interested that you are part of something so amazing as Moonmark. And it is really incredible how
it's pretty cool.
Designed and landed on the moon and raced it. It's all students. It's not like adults designing these. So could you tell us more about a little bit about what Moonmark is and what your experience with them has been like so far?
Sure, absolutely. And one of the cool things about Moonmark, right, is that it really illustrates some of the things that I spend a lot of my time thinking about, which is you could take a bunch of engineers, put them in a room and have them design a rover for the moon. And 10 years later, they would have one because they know what's right, they know what's wrong, and they have a process for doing it. Or you could give it to a bunch of students who don't know that there are rules that they're breaking along the way. And for 50 grand, they build a rover that works anyway, and they do it in a year. And in case you think I'm kidding, I'm not. That's actually, that's really what's going on, because nobody told him you couldn't do that, that's not the way things run on the moon. Okay, so Moonmark. What's Moonmark? Moonmark is a fantastic idea. There's this woman named Mary Hagee, and she put together this concept where why shouldn't there be a live race on the moon? Why shouldn't there be entertainment, the first, if you will, interstellar entertainment experience? And that is Moonmark. And so she got together some incredible minds, folks from Intuitive Machines who are launching rockets and designing rovers, students to think about designing the rovers themselves and building the racetracks and stimulating, the next generation of explorers and astronauts and space scientists and engineers. And great, you just like truly innovative thinkers. I mean, this is the coolest part of my job, is the fact that I get to deal with incredibly cool people that under normal circumstances, you look around and you're like, how did I get so lucky? So JJ Snow, who is one of the chief technology officers of the Air Force, totally cool, crazy thinker, fantastic woman. Frank Stevenson, this is a guy, and he's got a show on, or a documentary on like Netflix and Amazon. He designed these high performance racing cars, like, these $1 million cars. And now he's designing these rovers for the moon. And all the while, the whole point of it really is to get the next generation involved. And I mean, it's just super cool. If you're not already following Moonmark, you should. It is super cool. And there are opportunities right now. We're designing the racetrack for the moon, and it's students doing that. So there are lots of opportunities to get involved. And I would definitely, log in, because it's super cool.
Wow, no, when I read that, I was just like, wow, this is amazing. I have to find a way to like participate in this. And for any students watching, at least check it out. I'm pretty sure something in it will interest you, because it really is amazing what Moonmark is doing. I wanted to ask, so to be able to build a rover, you have to be very innovative. Like you said, students don't already know the rules, so they're able to kind of break those rules and like make something as complex as a rover in about a year. How can students become better innovators?
Well, that's a tough question. And yet, I guess it's also sort of simple. So innovation, it's hard to define, right? It's the act of taking something that is new, and it's not necessarily invented, right? But it's new, it's novel, and applying it sometimes to a new situation. Sometimes it's the act of inventing something new, but innovation isn't just invention. It's really applying something to solve a problem in a way it hasn't been solved before, and doing so in a way that adds value. And so I guess the way that students can be better innovators is simply by looking at the world around you and saying, what is a problem or a challenge or an opportunity I see that bothers me? Where am I seeing an unmet need? Where am I seeing an opportunity? When we think of innovation, too many times, and most of the time, and this is not a student thing, it's an everybody thing, we think of Elon Musk inventing or commercializing an electric car, or we think of somebody inventing something, like the iPhone, or inventing a new technology. But you know what innovation sometimes is? Changing the way that we engage with the world. The UN in some ways was an innovation. You and I sitting here together, talking, sharing what's going on in front of us is an innovation. The fact that, you get a community of younger people together to solve a problem that normally only engineers would solve, that's an innovation. And it solved a problem. It took the world from where it was to a new and different place. And sometimes they work, and most of the time they fail. But simply looking around and saying, what is it I don't like? What is it I'd like to change? And can I find a new way of thinking about the problem, despite the fact that people tell me that it won't work? That's kind of the secret to everything. Now, having a little basis in engineering and rockets and gravity probably won't hurt. But hey, I wouldn't let it stop you. Certainly didn't stop the people that designed the rovers for the moon.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you so much for that. It's just kind of incredible. Like I'm still like trying to comprehend it. Students can be innovators, like you said, looking at the world around us and
Yep.
kind of seeing what problems that we like, unmet needs that we see, problems that we see, and
Right.
how it's not just creating something like you said, like an iPhone or a car or anything like that.
Mhm.
It can just be the way you kind of connect and collaborate with the world. That's what
I, I mean, truth be told, my company at Stratalus, the company I work for, we don't even do product innovation. It's not something we do. Almost all the innovation that we focus on is changing the way that businesses engage with other businesses and the world around them. So it's called business model innovation. Like Amazon, for example, right? The Amazon itself, how you buy, how you sell, Uber, these are all innovations that, yeah, they're based on technology, right? But it's not the technology that's the innovation. The innovation is that, you were able to bring it all together to hail a cab or a car at home. If anything, the part of the innovation is society. The fact that, we're okay getting in a total stranger's car, giving them our home address, giving them our payment information, and letting us take us home. I mean, I'll tell you something, 30 years ago, getting in some stranger's car, giving them your address, handing them 20 bucks and saying, hey, nice to meet you, would have been considered crazy. And nowadays, my grandmother does it. So, right, that's an innovation in and of itself. And so you got to just think, how can you do it differently? And instead, of asking, why should I do this? Ask, why shouldn't I try?
Yeah, it's incredible. I think it's about time to open it up for the Q&A. So
Okay.
everyone start, you can put your questions in the Q&A and yeah, we'll start. Okay, so the first question is, how did you engage with business to help them drive their innovation ambitions?
Okay. No, it's a pretty broad question. Let's think about it for a second. I mean, when you say how do you engage with business to drive their innovation ambitions, I think the first thing that you have to help businesses understand is what it is they want to achieve. Okay, so let me explain. A lot of the work that we're doing right now is around some of the larger sustainability issues facing the world. How do we have clean water? How do we change away from fossil fuels to technology that doesn't emit any greenhouse gases? How do we be better citizens? How do we engage with our employees and our communities in a way that's more trusted? And a lot of times when a business will come to you, they won't know what their underlying problem is. They'll say, hey, I'm having issues with my people, or I'm in trouble with the government, or I'm having challenges with my operations, but they won't actually understand what the underlying problem is. And so the first thing you have to do is help them discover what their need is. And the next thing you have to do is help them think about how might they solve that problem in a unique and different way. So the way you engage with people, it's almost, you're a business doctor, right? You're a psychologist, really, right? You're a shrink, you're a business shrink. And the first thing you have to do, right, is help patients discover their own problems. Once you do that, the rest is just, finding stuff, testing it, applying it, working through the problem. But until people, recognize their own issues, you can't help them do anything. And so that's the first challenge.
Awesome, thank you for that answer. Our next question is, if someone is wanting to go into business in the future,
Mm-hmm.
do you think it is better to major in business and get an MBA, or to major in another area of interest and receive your MBA after you finish your major?
I think unquestionably park the MBA. So you should start with whatever it is your passion is. Okay, if you're passionate about history, or did I mention basket weaving, or music, or composition, or whatever the heck it is you're passionate about, start with that. Start with your passion and pursue it fulfill it as much as you can. And if you want to make money, if money is what you want to do, right, then yeah, go to business school. But even business school won't help you make money. Business school helps you understand how to read a P&L. Or profit and loss statement. It helps you do math. It helps you understand the theoretical aspects of marketing. But business school does not actually help you make money, right? Any more than going to medical school, makes you someone that can, or reading a medical textbook automatically makes you someone that can save a patient. You got to actually go to a hospital and you got to practice. So start with your passion, and then figure out if there's an opportunity there for you to make money from that, or just to be happy, frankly, because all the money in the world just won't buy you happiness. I mean, at some point you'll have enough money and then you'll be like, okay, well, I'm miserable. So find the things that you're passionate about. The good thing about business school, though, is if you find something you're passionate about, but you really suck at running it, you kind of have two options. One, find someone that doesn't suck at running it. Or two, go to business school and they can help you with some of the basics of running it. The other thing business school is really good at is, let's say you decided that you went to school to become a basket weaver and you decided, like 5 years in, this basket weaving thing isn't for me. Well, business school is really good for making a pivot, because once you graduate, especially if you graduate from a business school with a name where people come to recruit, and you decide you want to be an investment banker or a management consultant or in brand management or nonprofit management, at least now you're at a level playing field, right? I remember I went to business school with someone who was a showgirl in Vegas. She was a Vegas showgirl. And she decided she wanted to go to business school to change her career. Well, graduating from business school, we're all the same happy trained drones. And all the businesses look at us as opportunities with interesting backgrounds. And so, it's good for a career pivot. Although, she seemed pretty happy as a showgirl too. So.
Thank you for that advice. I think we'll have time for one more question.
Sure.
So what is your advice for students to stand out?
For students to stand out. So, right, you have to be yourself, right? If you're a quiet person and you're not going to be out there and stand on a stage and juggle and, shout from the rooftops, hey, look at me, I'm the greatest, which, by the way, isn't always a really solid strategy. Just, heads up, you kind of come across as being a bit of a jerk, but not that I did that. But, you have to know your strengths and play to them. So if you're someone that is deeply introspective, that thinks a lot, that takes the time before considering an answer, then do your best at playing to the strength of who you are and your personality, and deliver intelligent, eloquent, well thought out answers. If you're the sort of person that's great at song and dance and a show, then work on your song and dance and a show, and stand out by playing to your strengths, always being cognizant. And it took me, God, I don't even think I've gotten it yet, that your greatest strength is also your greatest weakness. So along the way, be self-aware. And I mean, if you can figure that out, I mean, I'll buy the book. I'll listen to your webinar, because I still haven't figured it out. But I know it's true.
Thank you so much for that, George. I'm sad to say this is a really great interview. Thank you. But we ran out of time for questions. But I just wanted to thank you so much for your time and all of your advice and insightful thoughts. It was really a pleasure to talk to you today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And I wish you the best of success and continued success with your series. Thanks a lot. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. And then thank you to our audience for joining in and listening. I just wanted to remind you, next week we're going to be interviewing Jose Mori, so don't forget to register to hear from him with the link in the chat, and I will see you all next week. Thank you once again, George. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.